Happy Wednesday and welcome back to our podcast conversation, especially this week as we are introducing some conversation regarding prayer. And throughout this week, we are in Catechism quote number 2567, which kind of defines prayer and gives us a few images which I just find are really encouraging when it comes to prayer. And I want to read that passage again for you today, just as I know that a lot of us might be driving or exercising or just may not have the text in front of us. And I don't want to kind of steal, as I did the last couple of days, just a little piece of wisdom from the quote. So Catechism quote number 2567 from the Catechism reads, and I quote, God calls man first. Man may forget his creator or hide far from his face. He may run after idols or accuse God of having abandoned him. Yet the living and true God tirelessly calls each person to that mysterious encounter known as prayer. In prayer, God's initiative of love always comes first. Our own first step is always a response, end quote. And I'm drawn this morning to the word tirelessly, which many of you have heard me talk about in the past, but it is just a word that bathes my heart with joy and mercy. The word tirelessly. You know, God never gets tired of reaching out to us. He never gets tired of calling us. He never gets tired of being the first, you might say, to be there in prayer, which is what we talked about on Monday. He never gets tired of taking the initiative to reach out to us, which is what we've talked about this week. You know, I've shared this image with you a few times, but you know, as I look back on my life, I'm keenly aware that relationally in my own life, I'm blessed just to have people who love me, and blessed to have people who, you might say, incarnate that desire to love me with a desire to spend time with me. Get asked invitations all the time to be with people, and a lot of times I have to say no, either because there's already things on the calendar, or because there's just not enough energy left in my body to extrovert anymore. And I often worry if people are going to get tired of asking, and eventually they'll just get tired of the no's, and they're just going to just stop asking. And I remember specifically with my sister, my younger sister Diana, when she was living in Homa. Her kids were younger, and it was the house that we would always go to. And I would show up late, or I'd have to leave early, and I remember a particular stretch where she kept inviting me to her house to join the rest of the family, and this was on my calendar, and I have to say no, or that popped up, and I'd have to say no, and over, I would just have to say no. And I remember her saying on the phone one day, "Hey, I'm not gonna stop asking." And I remember that just really kind of touched my heart, because there was a fear that at some point they're just gonna stop asking because I'm always saying no. That experience from a human being, as beautiful as my sister is, you know, we're not God. And imagine God and the unquenchable thirst that he has for us, right? I know that a lot of us are perhaps listening to podcasts on prayer, hoping that at some point I actually teach you how to pray. But before we perhaps share with you techniques of how to engage with God, I just want to remind us today who we're engaging with, and the fact that he's already there, and the fact that he's never going to not be there, because he tirelessly calls us to communion. He never gets tired. Now, he may want to talk to us about particular things, you know, once the prayer starts, but he's never going to not invite us. He's never going to not show up. He's never going to not desire to be with us. He's never going to get tired of us and our patterns. Regardless of how many times you say no, regardless of how many times you are unable to fulfill your own expectations of what it means to be a follower of Christ, regardless of how many times you drop the ball and fall into sin, God never gets tired of reaching out and asking you to be with him. And so I want to encourage you today, as one who's with you on the journey, that God tirelessly calls us to that mysterious encounter known as prayer. Again today, for your homework, I would encourage you to simply read 2567 in the Catechism. I know you did it yesterday, but read it again today. And don't just read it to look at the words. Ponder it, savor it, read it slowly. And maybe even pick a word or phrase today that most gets your attention and begin to talk to God about what those words mean to you and what they touch deep within you. Hoping today that your day is blessed. Looking forward to being with you tomorrow as well as the rest of this conversation on prayer. And until that unfolds, God bless you.